All right, a little update. So got the intake bolted in, got a few bolts on it. The intake sets the angle of the transom, so that's why they want it to be level with the bottom of the boat, even with the bottom of the boat, the flat part of it. It's because with that thing sitting flat, with that center flat section of the boat, the intake sets the angle of the transom. So, went pretty well on that. Got the engine bearers all tacked in. When I got to the front, these center rails here, they had quite a bit of gap under here, and the thing was, you got this thick plate here, you can't really bend that down to match. It's, but I was a little concerned about it, but as I tacked along, when the weld's cool, they kind of pull the bottom up to it. So, just an interesting little thing there. When you get out on these strips here, when you get out past the supports, you just got to keep it straight. So basically just measured off from one to the other, and kind of got off on one side and then realized, oh crap, because aluminum bends pretty easy when it gets hot. So then working on the outer chines is what they call these, this outer strip. At first I put this one on, and these things, I guess, are supposed to lay pretty flat. They're kind of supposed to match the angle of the bent piece in the back. I got up to here, and then I was pulling this up, and it was right here is kind of sitting past center, So I called Ronnie at RSR. He walked me through it, basically said, that needs to be obviously flatter than I had it, and explained that essentially everything you're doing, the tendency of everything is to squeeze inward and kind of narrow the front of the boat and, make it longer. So, essentially those need to be flatter. So I cut my spots on top. Not all the way through, but I cut them pretty close all the way through. Then I just used some channel locks and bent it down, and then I retacked it on the bottom so that it would, kind of pull towards the downward side. Instead of tacking on the top, where it's going to have a tendency to pull towards your tack weld. So anyway, that one went a lot better, and I'm like really close to center on that side. So, once I got it bent down, it stretches a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same on this side. Kind of crack those welds a little bit, bend it down, and then work my way back up. And they should be really close. But he was saying, essentially you could leave the front a little bit loose, if you had a bunch of gap there, because essentially when you get to putting the sides on and the top and all that, you're going to be kind of fitting those things anyway. So, Ronnie's been real helpful. Glad he's there, because, you could get it, but, you spend a lot of time figuring things out, and, of course, it's going slower than I thought it would. It's like you think you can get things done quick, and then you get stuck on details like that a phone call makes things a lot better. So I appreciate Ronnie for that. RSR. Everything else been great. The bends on the bottom keel section that they were, and it didn't fit the transom perfect at first, but then again when I tacked them on, it really sucked down in tight on it. So I was like, well, heck, the bends weren't really bad. So anyway, next thing is I need to turn this thing around and get that engine kind of dropped in there, mocked up to check my clearances on the bottom of the boat and alignment with the coupler and all that stuff. So if that looks good, yeah, I guess in theory I could, you know, build the engine motor mounts now, you know, the framework to hold the motor mounts. I know that's going to take some time, just figuring out, you know, how to get that set up to where it sits perfectly, you know, on that coupler. These things, you know, have to be pretty tight and square. So yeah, that might be the next trip here. You know, getting the motor mounts built right here without the sides on sure would be a lot easier. So I don't think there's a reason not to. I'm not real sure at this point. You know, I would think the ultimate goal is to actually put full welds on all this stuff, but I don't know. They're, you know, the instructions are just tack everything. So I'm like, well, depending on how I build the mounts, you know, I don't think any of it's coming back apart. So it's tacked in pretty solid. So I don't know. We'll see, but that's where it's at.